But you'll need to, okay, let me just, there you go.
Uh-huh, okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
all right.
We're rolling.
All right, you ready? Okay.
We ready?
Would you please tell us your name and where and when you were born?
My name is Sol Zimm. Formerly Zimniak. I changed my name when I came to this country. With Bertha Myers and Dr. Kupfer helped me they advised me I should cut off my name in half.
All right. Where were you born?
Koło, Poland. Born on October 1, 1911. Small town in Poland, about 35,000 citizens. About 5,000 of the families were Jewish families in that town. A very vibrant Jewish community. And but everybody was working, mostly, people were merchants or tailors, craftsmen, or shoemakers, barbers. In Poland, Jews could not, very seldom, very few could go to higher education, to the higher schools. So, and the majority of Jews, were just working tradesmen, people, merchants. I come from a large family. We are 6 brothers and 3 sisters, uncles and aunts and grandparents, cousins, big family. From all of them, only my brother and myself survived.
Tell us a little bit about what your life was like.
Well, my life, was my childhood was very, didn't worry too much. I was very active in sports, name any sports activity, played a lot of soccer, and athletics, ping pong, swimming, boating, fishing, you name it, I went through that. But at the age of 21, I was drafted in the Polish army. And I spent 18 months in the Polish army and was released. While I was still a youngster going to school, at the age of 15, I started, in the morning I was going to school, in the afternoon I was learning a trade. It was an apprentice and a tailor apprentice. When the war broke out, before the war, the years before the war, right in but in 1937, 38, the anti-Semitism in Poland was very, very great. The Polish boycotted the Jewish merchants. They wouldn't let the Polish people go to Jewish businesses. And you got all, the propaganda against Jews was very great. So when the war broke out, I was drafted in the Polish army on June 18th. They called me back to reserve duty. On July 18th, they released me from the reserve duty. The 24th of the same month, they called me back at 3 o'clock at night, and there was a knock at my door, and they called me back. I have to go to the army. They sent me back to Poznan. And in Poznan, they called me in my regiment where I was before. And they gave me a uniform, but they did not have any rifles for me. So assigned me duty to the quartermaster, and we had all, the food for the whole charge of the whole regiment, Polish army. And we had 4 trucks loaded with food and 80 cattle wagons, horse-drawn wagons with food for the military. And they sent us out right on the German border. We stayed in the forest, in the tents. And on September 1, when the German attacked Poland, they started bombing, dropping around in our area. We were stationed in the forest. And one of our sergeants said, well, our Air Force has trainings in maneuvers. And then finally, when bombs start dropping around us, we went an alarm, and we start, everybody loading up the trucks. We chasing, the Germans were chasing, we ran away all the way, day and night. At daytime, the Germans were bombing us, and then at night, wherever was a farm around, they knew which way we were going. Every farmhouse close to the highway, to the road, was on fire. So they could see at night where we were walking. So day and night they were bombing us. After 18 days, Poland surrendered to the Germans, and I was captured and was taken a prisoner of war and brought into a town called Sochachev. They put us in, about several hundred prisoners in that building. It was a school building, about 3 stories high, surrounded with wires, with German guards around everywhere. They gave us to eat. We were there for 2 weeks, herring, and no water to drink. And then in the middle of that school building was a little ditch with a dead horse laying there, was some water. We drank that water, and a lot of people got sick, dysentery from that. After 2 weeks, we got us out from that camp and took us to lodge. We marched into lodge, and I was there in the lodge, and was in a manufacturer of white linen. Etigon Manufacturers Company put us in a warehouse, and every day they were taking out a group of us, about 40, in unloading freight cars with coal. So in the meantime, the Germans, the territory where I come from, belonged to Germany before World War I. Poland was divided between Germany and Russia and Austria before. So Germany considered all these people that came from that territory as German citizens. So there came an order to all the prison camp, so all these people that come from that territory should be released, but no Jews. Jews cannot be released. So one day we went to work with the unloading coal, and the sergeant in charge of it, he said, if you work very good today, I'll give us passes. You can go to the office the next day, and they will give you a permit that you'll be released. So with me having a name like Solomon, they knew that I was Jewish. So instead, I changed my name to Zygmunt. And my last name was Ziemniak, so they wouldn't know. Actually, this is sounds like a Polish name. So I changed my name to Zygmunt Ziemniak. I came into the office. They gave me a permit, and I had to go to the gate and waiting until a group of about 20 assembled. And then they got a couple of guards and took us to the railroad station. The railroad station, we were waiting until it was filled up with prisoners. And we drove from Lodz all the way to Kutno. Kutno was about halfway from our town between Lodz and Kolo. And from Kutno to our town was about 50 kilometers. We started walking. From that, the railroads were bombed out. So we walked, and walked day and night. And I was in the prisoner of war camp with a friend of mine. We kept together. So he was from a little town, the name Dombie. This was about 18 kilometers before our town. And his parents lived there, so he told me when you get home, he got released. He had a brother in Lodz. He went to see his brother. So we go into, tell my parents, give it a regard, tell them they're alive, which I did. And then I came home. When I came home, which I forgot to tell you, before, when in January 1939, I got married. And I left home when I went to called me drafted. I left home with a wife. My wife was pregnant. And when I came back home, a baby girl was born already, was about two weeks old. And the town was not the same no more. The bridges were bumped out, everything, there was a lot of destruction. And the Jews had to assemble every day on the marketplace and to go to do all kind of dirty work for the Germans. Because the community council had received an order, and they had to assemble all the Jews and assign different places of different kind of works every single day. So we would stay there and we worked until 1941. The Jewish Community Council received an order to supply 500 young and healthy men to be sent away for 6 weeks' work. So we get good pay, good food, and good shelter. And after 6 weeks, they come back home. And I was one of these 500. But I knew I didn't feel like going, leaving a wife with a child. So where I lived in the home, we had a little attic, and I was hiding in the attic and covered the door to that attic with a little wardrobe, a piece of furniture, covered up, we couldn't see the door. So I was hiding there. There came a messenger from the community council, and I could hear he said to my wife, if your husband doesn't show up by 2 o'clock, we'll take you and your child. Well, I couldn't allow this to happen, so I didn't have no choice, and I went to the community council, and they assembled all the Jews had to assemble in the synagogue. The synagogue finally, the next day, we stayed overnight. The next day, the Germans came with several trucks, military trucks, load up everybody on the truck. We sent away to a city of Poznan. In Poznan, they got us in a school, in a camp, which was a school, one big building, surrounded with barbed wires, guards with shepherd dogs all around surrounded. And in that camp, every day we had to start going to work, to all kind of work. We received beating and whipping, and that was our pay, what we were getting. Food, you know. At that time, while we were there, we still could receive in home some packages, some food. So from June till December, in Poznan, we did work that all kind of dirty work. We cleared swamps, was from peat moss, mud, it was swamps, and we cleared this out, all the swamps. We had railroad push carts, could load up these carts and clear out the swamps from the water, and we made a beautiful lake out of this in the shape of the form of a carp fish, a fish like a carp. You know. Hundreds of people died in that work. In Poznan, they had about 10 and 12 different camps for all Jews from all the Jews from the territory around Poznan, little towns, even from Lodz. They were bringing in people who work in these camps. Hundreds and hundreds of people got beaten and died. I was always a worker, a good worker. I knew for the Germans, you have to work. And the Germans, the foreman was a German engineer. He noticed who could do work and who did not. So he made me like a Vorarbeiter, like a foreman in charge of the plant we were working. We built up, we made a park, planted 6 million trees. We made all kind of roadways and walkways and everything. And I was in charge. People were bringing with pushcart all kind of sand and that, and I had to spread it out in front with some help here. And he could see when the checked whether the work is done good. So I avoided to get whipped, you know, beating. And in a way, even that man was such a monster. He was going with a cane and hitting over the head, breaking people's arm, and knocking. Lots of people got killed.
Do you remember his name?
You know, that's right. No, I never know the name. But he never touched me. He looked where I was doing, and always could sit down behind me, knee down, and look at the plants how it spread out, and everything was fine. It was all right. So one day they took us out in wintertime. The Germans took us out to the lake. It was about 40 degrees below zero, cold and a storm, and they told us to chop in the ice, make holes that they can catch fish, fishing in the ice. In the with the wind chill, must have been about 70 or 80 degrees cold, but the Germans their noses start freezing up, getting white too. They decided to go home. A lot of people died then from freezing, were frozen to death, and we had to carry these dead people home on our shoulders, bring them home. They wouldn't leave any evidence of any people, in the dead, brought everything home. And then that camp, from that camp, I was sent away to another camp, different camp, which is called, it was a girl called Kreising. At that camp, the Germans were building a railroad from Poznań to Warsaw, extra railroad, and we were laying the railroad tracks. They building the roads. We were, with sledgehammers, we were breaking big rocks with stones to build the roads, and then we were laying the iron railroad tracks. And the people, 20 people were assigned to carry one iron rack. So some people died daily, the beating and whipping. And one day my legs were swollen. I was so weak that I couldn't walk, only drag my feet. I couldn't cross a railroad track. I had to bring, with my hand, one foot bring over, and then bring the other one to go across the railroad track. So anyway, one day, the Germans came out an order, every prisoner that leaves his place of work more than 50 meters and will be caught, will be hanged. So a lot of people, every weekend, when somebody was hanged, from all the camps, people had to come together and watch how the people were hanged up. One place, the name of Stadion, used to be a soccer stadion, and that place, they made a camp out of it, and there all the hangings took place. So he told there was the chief from Gestapo, a little fellow, gave him a nickname Fifi. And he says to you Jews have to watch and learn how to hang one another. All right, so I worked in this camp, and we were unloading also cement and everything what was necessary. And there was a German Jew in that camp. He was a capo. He himself was a gangster. He beat people to death. He helped out in order to survive himself. One day, there was a foreman in our group, the Pole, and there was not far, about a quarter kilometer away from us, was a field, a potato field. The potatoes were growing, and that foreman gave us, three of us, gave us permission to go bring some potatoes. They bring for the whole group. They can make a fire and make them up, make potatoes. So myself, two others and myself, I dragged my feet to find that we came to that place. We had these bags, everybody loaded up with potatoes. In an adjacent field was working a farmer, a Pole, on a tractor. And he noticed us that we were on the field. He came from behind with the tractor, caught all three of us, and he took us to the German gendarmerie, to the police. And we begged him. I said, why are you? He was so angry. He says, you have no right to steal potatoes here. Why? He brought us to the German police. So we knew once we arrested, we brought before the Gestapo. That's the end of it. He brought us to the police, to the precinct. The German in charge on the marine, he put up the potatoes on the table. The people stole the potatoes. And that officer in charge said the secretary to type up a report that we stole potatoes. So one of my friends, he had a gold watch in his pocket. And he gave it to the sergeant, and we were begging, pleading with him, crying, please give us any punishment you want, but please don't send us to Gestapo. Because we knew once we get the Gestapo, that's the end. Because nobody survived the Gestapo. he said, after he gave him the watch, he told the secretary, had already typed up a report, he tore it up and he told her to write another report. We told him that the potatoes were, where we were working in the place, the potatoes were growing on that place, and the Paul gave us permission to take some potatoes we have for the whole group. And every one of us had the same story to tell. So the sergeant in charge of that precinct said, I have to send you to Gestapo anyway, I can't. So we didn't trust him, we didn't believe him. Once he said we go to Gestapo, that's finished. So he got somebody, a policeman on a bicycle, and he was riding and we were running in front of that bike. We ran about 4 or 5 kilometers until we came to the Gestapo main office. The Gestapo, they got us in a big basement, dark, no windows, wet floor. We didn't know what it is. And that happened to be an Erev Yom Kippur in 1942. Came in that cellar, we cried, we knew this is the end. So all we did, there was no place where to sit down, just a concrete cement. And we knew that is the end. So we hugged, all three of us, we stayed and we cried and we prayed. And in the middle of the night, the door opens and another prisoner has been brought in. And we asked him, what are you in for? He was a German Jew. And why were you arrested? He said, I wrote a letter home and the Gestapo intercepted that letter. And that's why they brought him in. And that German Jew was a classmate of the chief of Gestapo from Poznan at the University of Berlin. That chief of Gestapo, he himself hung his classmate. He hung him 2 days later. So the next morning, while I start interrogating, they took out one friend from ours, bring up to the chef, to the office, and interrogate him, find out what, ask him question, and we had all made up, everybody give the same testimony. All right, then they come out and take out the other prisoner, and I'm the last one. I was going crazy, you know, I say, I didn't know what's happening, the other one didn't come back, and the other two. Finally, they came for me. They bring me up to the office of Gestapo, Mr. Fifi, you know, with a little sits in the office, a gun on his desk, you know, handgun. He asked me my name, my father's name, my mother, my grandfather, my great-great-father, all kind of where I come from. Finally, why? Well, we told him, I says, that foreman, we were hungry, everybody liked to work, but we were very hungry, and the foreman gave us permission. The potatoes were growing on the field where we were laying the railroad tracks, and he says, he got angry, he says, Scheiße, that Pole has nichts zu sagen. That this Pole has nothing to say, has no right to give you any permission. That was his answer. Finally, he brought me let me out of the office, I come down, the other two of my friends are sitting and waiting. So the same policeman was brought over there, took us to that stadium, soccer stadium, where they camp, but all these people were brought to hanging. So we knew that's it. And all these policemen from the camp, these couples, they knew anybody comes from the Gestapo, that's finished. So we didn't go to work anymore, and they gave us better food, just, you know, build us up our body that we were ready, good for hanging last night. And we stayed around, we knew, everybody looked at us like, you know, felt sorry for us. So about 10 days, an order comes, we are being transferred to another camp. And that camp, it happened to be, but we don't go back to the same camp where I was. I was arrested, all I had a shirt and a pair of slacks on my body, nothing else. We came back to that camp that happened to be a lucky strike, a small camp, about 100 people, And half of that camp were my hometown friends from my hometown. The man in charge of the camp police was a friend of mine, a person from my hometown, and all. So I got better food, you know. They was building me up, and on that camp we were going to work, or back at different work, doing all kind. And right away being a tailor, I did some work for the civilians. But in the war, they couldn't buy anything or get any new clothes, so I had to need a lot of repairs. So I did repair work. But in Poznan,
What was the name of this special camp?
there's a little camp called Golno. Yeah, that's the camp. They were going to workers. In Poznan, every 2 weeks, we were going to a public bathhouse. Went Lausung, you know, get underwear clean, you know. From all the camps, at different times, they used to come into the same camp. And everyone who comes in with a pencil, people were writing their names on the wall. And one day I came in and I found my sister's name on the wall. And I wrote my name underneath. This way I found out that my sister's there too. We were in that camp and I worked for the state about several months. And the people who were in the camp were people in the kitchen, some policemen. They had wives, sisters, relatives in the camp where my sister was. My sister had a big job. She was in the administration different. And she was in charge of giving out food for the prisoners. So these people in the camp, in my camp, like the people, they were giving me some extra food that my sister could give their wife in that camp, different food. Somebody would give me a loaf of bread that my sister could give their wife there, or her sister. One day, all these policemen, the guardsmen, the kitchen, 5 of they arranged with one of these guardsmen on a Sunday. They would ride up to visit their wives or sister, and they arranged that I could go there to 5 of us. We rode around to all the city of Poznan in a streetcar with that guard, all to the other end of the city, came to that camp. So men are not allowed to go to the women's camp. So the commandant was also bribed, you know, already there, and we went in a separate building right there, he knew. So while I was in the camp, my sister came, I visited my sister. That visit, my sister, I could never forget. We hugged around for about 20 minutes, and we couldn't speak to each other.
Do you want to take a break for a minute?
Beg your pardon?
Do you want to take a break for a minute?
Yeah, we'll take a rest for a minute.
Okay. Hmm? You did, I think. Yeah, did you get the key?
At that time, I did.
So, Rob says anytime you want to stop, just say stop the camera.
Mm.
And we'll stop. All right? You ready?
Yeah.
All right, we want to start with the meeting with your sister?
All right. At that time, I didn't see my sister for 2 years. The first time I saw her, and we met with sister for about a half an hour. The first 20 minutes, we just couldn't speak to each other. We just couldn't talk. And my sister had a gold chain, which she got it from my mother, and she gave me that chain and told me, take it, maybe the chain will help you sometimes. All right, I took it, the chain from my sister, and I kept it. In October of the same year came an order, the Germans had an order to liquidate all the camps from Poznan and send away to Auschwitz. They loaded up on cattle cars, and were riding the cars for about 2 days and 2 nights, Finally, we arrived in Birkenau and Auschwitz, the middle of the night. Must have been about 2 o'clock. Our reception was the German SS with shepherd dogs, beating and kicking us, and getting into that gate which says, Arbeit macht frei, a sign of the gate, work makes you free. So we came into Birkenau, unloaded, they put it in a barrack number 5, and they put it on bunks, 3 bunks, one on top of the other, and I was on the top bunk. On that bunk was about 10 of us laying in a place, pressed like sardines. We were laying sideways. When one wanted to turn around, everybody else had to turn. No, just on hard boards laying there. The next day, come in, we bring us in, we go to camp to Entlausung. Entlausung, they take you across to another barracks. You walk across a narrow alley between 2 barbed wire fences. And you come across over there, they take off, put you in a barrack, take off all your clothes, naked, and they shave every hair on your body, what you have, take off, cut everywhere. And they dump you in a barrel of Lysol, dump you in for Entlausung, kill all the lice, everything was there. And then they give you a tattoo number. And when I took off all my clothes, I had that gold chain from my sister, and I took it out, and it was a wooden barrack, and I found a place that was like little bars from the wood, and I stuck the chain was hitting it up in a place there in the barrack, under the ceiling. And when it gave me the numbers, and by sticking with it, give you the tattoo number, every time I stick you with the needle, when you hit you on your nose, stays anyway. But after I got finished with the tattoo and everything, it was already late in the afternoon, and that was late October, and when it was getting dark, the fences were electrified, or with electrically charged, so they didn't want to send us across that narrow corridor to the other camp. They put us back in the same barrack where I took off my clothes. But it was cleaned out, there was no clothes, nothing in there. So after I knew where I hid my chain, and I went back to the same place and carefully watching it, nobody had noticed, and I took that chain back and had a watch pocket, and I stuck it into the pen. They gave me a coat with a long pair of pants, being short, the pants are not, but it didn't have no shoes, so I was walking around. So I stuck my chain in the watch pocket. And the next day, they took us back to the barrack number 5. In the morning, we stayed there over day. We stayed overnight, and the next morning, we got taken about 6 o'clock in the morning. Out, there was snow, ice on the ground, and I have no shoes, but I under my long pants. And we stay in the couples from the counting all these people and marching back into the barrack, and everything is moving so slowly. I staying there, I didn't know nothing. Why does it move so slow? So while we're coming back, the couples themselves start searching every prisoner again. Maybe somebody has hidden something, you know. I come into the gate, and tells me a couple to take off the clothes. It takes my pants, it turns upside down, it shakes. And the chain didn't fall out, nothing. And I survived, you know. The chain was still in my pocket. So the next day, we were free, we walk around and come out, and I met a friend of mine who came to Birkenau a week before, from another camp, a week before I came. And I met him there, and he says to me, have you managed to hide something? And the first time, they not knowing what was going on, you didn't trust nobody there, because I've seen some Russian prisoners running around, grabbing, beating one another, grabbing what they can, searching for food. So I say, I don't have anything. The next day I met him again. I think I have a chain here, a gold chain. And He said, I know somebody that you can sell it to. All right. He took me to a guy who was a couple from a barrack, and he was in charge of giving out food for the prisoners, bread and soups. I sold this change for 4 loaves of bread and 2 soups. But I couldn't take 4 loaves of bread at one time, so I said, I'm taking 2, and 2 I'm getting the next day, tomorrow. And they gave me a soup right away, and I took 2 loaves of bread, cut it up in quarters, I stuck it in pockets, I gave my friend a half of it, and I ate right away a half of it, and the rest are in the pockets. The next day, I'm coming back for the other 2 loaves of bread, and it was the time around noontime, and he gives up the soup from, and I had a dish of mine, and I handed it to the guy, and he looks at me, and it hit me over the head with that with the handle, over the head, and I was full of blood, and they kicked me out, and I didn't get no bread, no soups no more. This was my rest of the payments. But still, I think that the 1.5 loaf which I had, and I had 10 days in Birkenau, kept me up a little my strength. When I came before a selection of Mengele, he grabbed me by my muscle, he touched me, put me. This helped me survive to get through Mengele. So without it, maybe I would be sent me on the other side. But listen.
Did you know what happened to your sister?
Well, I found out later what happened to my sister. My sister's, even the camp, was 100 women in that camp. After, going backwards now, after World War I, it's in the 1919, when the war was over, it was a typhoid epidemic in our town. Our family went through a whole typhoid epidemic. Mm-hmm. Well, once you get through the typhoid, once you're sick, you're immune to typhoid. Mm-hmm. So in my sister's camp happened, half of most of the women got typhoid. Mm-hmm. So when my sister didn't get sick, but the Germans didn't play around. Once it's heavy, they sent the whole camp direct in the oven to the gas chamber. But when he came back, I found out later that the whole camp was direct to the gas chamber. So anyway, when I got to, they sent me to Camp Jaworzno. Jaworzno is a coal mine camp, and when we came there, it was just 2 barracks. It surrounded around with barbed wires all around, a big camp. And in the middle of the camp was a big mountain. And we had to level off that mountain to make straighten out, and we started building a camp. I was a carpenter, helping building the barracks. I was a bricklayer, anything you name it, I did all kinds of skills. They considered me as a skilled laborer. For skilled labor, the Germans see more pay from the civilian companies they send these laborers out than a plain laborer. So finally, we built up a camp of 4,000 prisoners. Some of the barracks, or sewer lines, everything was made there. And I was there was people going work in the coal mines. I work in the outside commando, what they call. They built an electric power plant was being built in, which is now in Poland, one of the largest electric power plants in Poland. This we built there. So in that place of the Außenkommando, about 2,000 prisoners were working. And while we were working there, we did all kind of business with the civilians. The civilians, during the war, they couldn't buy anything, any clothes or underwear or anything. And we, being a tailor, I managed to do a lot of things in camp, do some work for some couples. And every 2 weeks, we used to go and Klausung to get a bath, everybody, and you have to return 2 pieces of dirty underwear, and they get 2 clean ones. And nobody checked what you throw in the box, as long as you put 2 pieces in. It happened some of the prisoners used to get a new pair of underwear. So what we do is they were selling this new underwear to the civilians that were working there. About how do you manage to save one? So I could make from the old pair, from 1 pair, 2 pair. I cut out the sleeves to make a pair of undershorts, and from the long I make 2 pair. So, and they gave me a shirt without sleeve, but nobody checked what we were giving back. So this way, when I made another pair, I could get a piece of bread, but I managed, or some kind of soup. So this way I managed for myself to get some extra food. And one day, I worked in the place where I worked with one civilian. I used to do some dealing with the civilians too. So I had on myself an extra pair of new underwear under my jacket, hanging over my shoulders. And that day, when I worked in the concrete, we had was a tool shack. Every morning you picked up the tools. I had to put on rubber boots to work on and step in concrete working. And you pick up shovels and pick irons. And in the afternoon, you brought these tools, put it back in the tool shack. And one day that civilian brought me a loaf of bread, a round loaf of bread, and he put it on the table in the tool shack, and he told me, and I knew where it was. When I went back to give back my rubber boots, put my tools back, the shovel, whatever, I reached for that loaf of bread, but we never could close the door, was not permitted to give back close the door for the tool shack. The door had to all be open. When I reached for that loaf of bread, and I said, no, I see that SS German stays in the door with a shepherd dog. And he noticed that I was reaching for something, and he said, what have you got there? I said, nothing, I shoved it back. And he started looking at himself, and he found that loaf of bread himself and brought it out. And right away hit me, you know, in the head. He knocked out 4 teeth of mine, that chunk. And he was beating me so bad, and the dog jumped on me, biting my legs, tore my pants down, and I was laying on the ground and beating with it. Where did I get this? I said, well, a civilian was passing by with that loaf of bread, and I had a pack of cigarettes, and I exchanged with him. And he gave me the loaf of bread, but he would start kicking, beating me again. Then he took off my clothes, and he found an extra pair of underwear of this. Where did you get this? He said, I stole it. In camp, stealing is no crime. Everything everybody steals from one another. I stole it. All right, I took the pair of underwear with a loaf of bread, and we were marching back to the camp. We came back, the count up, head counts in the camp, and my number is called out, my number. There was no name. You are a number in the camp. My number is called, come to the office. I come to the office. There's a couple and all the assessment and the sergeant in charge of the office. And that loaf of bread is laying on the table and the pair of underwear is laying there. Where did you get this? I told him the same story. I say, I got a cigarette in exchange with a civilian passing by. He gave me the loaf of bread. He didn't say, just unbuttoned my pants, let it down with my naked behind, and they had a rubber whip that long and as thick as my arm. And he gave me the couple, let you know, with that stool, the couple sits on my head, and the other one gave me 5 whips. Gets me up. Asked me again, where did you get this? I told him the same story. They gave me 8 times the 5. My behind was in bleeding, in the blue and black. I couldn't sit. For 6 weeks, I couldn't sit or lay on my back. I had to either standing up or laying on my stomach. Finally, after 8 whips, he asked me, would you recognize that civilian that gave you that loaf of bread? I say, yes. All right, I say, go send me back to the barrack. The next day, we go to work, come out to the same place. The assessment called me out and said, all right, show me where that is. There were over 2,000 people working. There's about a square mile big, that plant. And I would start walking around looking from one place to the other, carrying him every place. In the meantime, he was kicking me behind, and the dog was biting my legs. And walking, I knew one thing. If I tell him who gave it to me, I knew that man would be taken to concentration camp, and I wouldn't survive one night in the camp because the prisoners will kill me. Because all these prisoners were dealing, making some business with the civilian, and they would know I was ruining the whole thing. The civilian would get scared of doing any business with the prisoner anymore. So I say, either way I'm dead, I might as well not say anything. When I was walking around, I knew all the prisoners was watching me, what happened, you know. And finally, after walking around for about 2 hours with him, I never took him to that place where the civilian was working. Finally, he takes me back to the place where I worked, and the building we were building, that power plant was about 5, 6 stories high already, finished. He takes me up on top of the floor, up the highest, floor there, and he grabbed me in front of my back and he leaned me over the wall and he said, "You have the last chance. If you don't tell me now, I let you down and you're finished." I started to cry and I said back, "Please do what you, if I knew I would have told you." So finally he pulled me back, kicked me in behind, and he told me, "Go to hell." And he sent me, but never sent me back to the same place of work no more. Because they considered being a skilled worker, they got more pay for me than for a plain worker. That's why they saved me in another place, and I worked as a bricklayer. It's all right. But at that time, all the prisoners, they knew what happened. I didn't spoil for their business, didn't tell them no. They respect me much more for that time. All right, I worked in that place until January 1945. The Russians were closing in, coming in there, and they bombed the camp, the middle of the night. The bomb dropped, it lit up like a Christmas tree in the air, was hanging, all right. And they bombed the warehouse, and they bombed the building where the kitchen was. And in the kitchen, there were couples, the cooks were such gangsters, such murderers, because the Germans took out all these prisoners, they emptied all the prisoners in the war, all these lifers. They took them to the concentration, led them in the concentration, and they were in charge of all the Jews. All these couples were gangsters, lifers. So several of these cooks were killed, and the warehouse was bombed. So a lot of the prisoners were running to the warehouse, catching potatoes with all kinds of food, whatever they could. But right away came an order in the middle of the night, the camp is being liquidated. So everybody had to get whatever you could put on the coat and take it. You didn't have nothing to carry with you anyway. We marching. We came to the gate. Everybody received a section with 2 loaves of bread, and we walked out. Snow and ice, you imagine in East Poland in January, snow knee-deep with ice. We started marching, and we marched for several hours. Finally, we came to a resting place. Tell us to sit down in snow and ice, lay down, and there was slush, under the snow was water. Sat down and fell asleep. And right away, while I was asleep, somebody grabbed my package with the 2 loaves of bread. I didn't have nothing anymore at all. We marched from that camp. Finally, we came into the middle of the night to a camp, to a barn. All the camps got into that barn. That barn we stayed till the morning. There was only practically standing room only in that barn. Whenever you find a place, if you could sit down, you were lucky. You found a place. A lot of people died there, with dysentery, no sun, nothing, no latrine, everything there. The next morning, they gave us a little soup the next morning, and we marched in. We were marching all Sudetenland. You heard of Sudeten? It is the biggest snow up to knee deep, and we walked for a whole day. The following day, we came to a camp called Blechhammer. The Blechhammer was a concentration camp, but the camp was empty. The people marched out before we came in there. So we came in, and we took the place of theirs there. And we could hear while we were there that the Russians are closing in. We could hear far away artillery bombs, shell falling, that the war was going on. But we didn't know where we were. The place where we were, nothing. Anyway, one evening, all of a sudden the Germans disappeared. The guards, everything is gone, and the camp is free. We didn't know what to do. Everybody was running to the warehouses, open up. In Poland, they have these long, they bury in the ground potatoes, covered up with straw and dirt. So opened up everything, and everybody was grabbing back at the potatoes. We find can from marmalade can, all kind of food, about a gallon full. And everybody was making fires, cooking potatoes. For 3 days, we were free. People started running away. We didn't know which way to go. But there was some people went out of the camp, And they came back because the front was going and fighting there, and they didn't know where to go to. So we stayed. One night, after the third night, I sleep on all the bunks here, and I slept on the top of the bunk, and a friend of mine in the middle, and one was the three of them. And one of them, we were at about the third barrack from the front gate where the guards were. All the windows open, the doors open, and the German machine gun, everybody aroused. The Germans came back, the guard, and they took out from the first three or four barracks, 800 men, and we took us and we went on a death march. And my friend, which was in the middle of the bunk, he was hid under the barrack. When I met him after the war, he saw me the next day. The Russians came in, he was free that day. And that was in January, and they took us out on a march, and on that march, we were without food, without what to eat. We picked up in the field sugar beets.
Did they tell you where you were going?
Huh?
Did they tell you?
No, well, they tell us where we're going. We didn't know where we're going. We just go walking. And anybody who sat down got shot, killed, couldn't they? You couldn't sit down. So we were pulling out sugar beets from the field, and that's what we were eating. And I didn't have anything, any food, anything. So at the end, it was a German, one assessman, walking with his helmet on his belt, up, turn around, and anybody who sat down, he couldn't walk, he just killed him. And the empty shells he was putting in his helmet. And one day he counted 40 empty shells. That means he killed 40 people at that time. For 2 weeks, we were marching day, and at night we got in farmers' barns. And in the barns we found some sugar beets we ate. Finally, after 2 weeks on that march, we came into a camp called Gross Rosen. And Gross Rosen, we were lucky with just a half a day. They gave us half a loaf of bread and a soup. And then, from the half a day, then they took us to the railroad station. And the railroad station was about 2 or 3 kilometers to walk. One of my friends had dysentery. He sat down, he couldn't walk no more. So another friend of mine and him, he took his arm on one shoulder and one arm of my shoulder. And he said, please don't give up. We're going to the railroad station, we're going to survive. Finally, we dragged him, and we dragged him. He couldn't step because of dysentery, so sick. We reached to come in the railroad station, got in the cattle cars, and that was in Weimar. In Weimar, the station that station was bombed the day before. A lot of prisoners were there, dead corpses were laying around on the railroad tracks. And we came and we loaded up from Weimar, we came to Buchenwald. They brought us to Buchenwald, and Buchenwald was in the camp we had only it was in the 15th of February, a month long since we left Auschwitz. We came in there to Buchenwald. There was no place, no barrack, just a tent. And in the tent we slept on a cot, like a military cot. 2 people on a cot just to keep warm one another, or we had a blanket and went there. And in Buchenwald, I was about 10 days. We were going every day to different works. And after 10 days, they loaded up on freight car and sent it away to southern Germany, a place called Schemberg. A small camp, about 400 people, 4 barracks in a square around. In that camp, we were going every day to work. I met in this camp 2 friends of mine, my hometown. They were there a long time before, and they asked him what's going on. And they told me that they're going to work. They were little railroad cars ahead. They're working. There were mountains knocking down what's called shell rock. They're pressing out from the shell rock oil, the Germans, using for that oil. And I was right away, I was working on that freight train, and making a contact with the engineer was from the train, made a contact, and he was giving, and I was organizing some extra food from that friend, which I brought food for my other two friends too. Get some potatoes, I could organize some extra food. These two friends, they couldn't believe themselves that I was such a good organizer that I could right away help myself. So being there in that camp, and this was came in working into the March. We were going every day to work. We were hungry. We were picking up leaves growing in the grass, and we eating the grass because they didn't have enough food. Anything we could get a hold of, but still we survived. One of my friends was sent away with the sick people. He couldn't hold on. When the other two, another one of mine, we stuck together, and by until in April, the French army started coming around, flying already, looking what's going on. And one day the French started bombing the camp. There was a cement factory, a big chimney. When we saw the French plane, we stood just so happy, happy to, we didn't hide. We tried hiding just fine. Look them up. Come on, it's knocked the bomb. So they bombed the cement factory, knocked the chimney down, and they bombed a barrack. It was a square camp with a barrack, and the SS barrack was across a street with the barrack where I was. And I remember we started bombing that day. I was in the barrack, come back to the barrack. I was hiding under a table with the James Bond, and they dropped a bomb in that barrack where the SS were. But the SS had all the bunkers there. But they killed several of the SS men in that barrack. Right away, the same day came an order, liquidated the camp. So the commandant from that camp gave an order. We start marching and around. This was in Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, the mountains. And the SS men, we marched on the highways, start walking around in the mountains. You're walking like a snake up to the top of the mountains to go across. We walk. And that assessment, the commandant from that camp knew, it was so late, he knew the war was lost. And he didn't want to have the responsibility for being, he had an order to take the whole camp to Lake Constance, so that's in southern on Boden, between Austria and Germany is a lake, to put us on a boat and sink the boat. But he didn't want to take the responsibility, so he tried to prolong that march. Instead of taking a shortcut, he's making a longer route. So we come to one place, we couldn't go across because the French army was coming over there. We marched back. So then he put us in a barn, one barn, a farmer's barn, overnight to stay. So the SS wanted to burn the barn, put it on fire, burn up with everything. But he did not permit. I found this out after the liberation about that. So myself, I didn't know what that's all about then, but later I found out. So we were marched slow around, with a snake road. Finally, we marched on the highway, and we come across, and I was at the end of our column marching, and I hear assessment comes on a bicycle on 3 wheels, a motorcycle. And he says to the guard walking behind, he speaks in German to him. He says, "You are still here? The French are about 5 kilometers from here. They go marching on tank." So they gave us an order to get off the road and sit down. They had their wagons for themselves with the trucks loaded with all kind of goods. All of them, they took off all their belongings from the truck, and they just disappeared. And for me, at the last minute, I didn't trust the Germans. I was scared to death. I said, the last minute to get killed, that's the worst thing, because I was determined all my life, all the camp life, to survive one day, to find out, to see Hitler's end. And for me, after that, I didn't care anymore. And then I was walking, you know, hiding, walking away. It was a little forest, a little with my friend. We just walking, you know, slowly to get into the woods. While in the woods, and we noticed a farmhouse, you know. Farmhouse, we opened a barn and we got a stack of hay. We crawled in the hay and just fell asleep there. Didn't know what happened. We're dead. So what happened, the next morning we get up and we hear a lot of noises on the roads going on, and we are scared to open the door, just stick out the head like rabbits, you know, sticking hay.
I have to stop. We've just run out of tape.
All right.
You can
Okay.
remember you had just gotten into the hay and continued the story.
Right.
Right.
Speed it.
What do you want me to start now?
We'll start with the,
We are finished?
with the liberation, then we'll go back and pick up.
Oh.
We had just gotten into hay when the last.
Yeah, we looked out to the barn and see a lot of prisoners. Finally, we walked out and we see our friend. I said, what's going on here? What's happening? I said, you don't know, the French army way in front of us. We were liberated. We are free people, you know. Everybody's happiness, you know. So right away, a group of us went into the farmhouse to that farmer, and the farmer was scared to death, you know, we were free. And we said, we are hungry, we want something to eat. So right away, we made bread and potatoes, we cooked a soup, everybody, you know, got food. So and then the farmer said, you know what, about 5 kilometers from here is a railroad station, and the German, there's a whole train loaded with all kind of food, which the Germans left there. And I suggest that you go look at the train. So finally we walked, we came out to the train, all hundreds of prisoners all in the top of the freight cars, loaded with all kind, sacks of flour, sacks of sugar, all kind of canned sardines, hams in cans, chocolate and cocoa and everything you can imagine, fruit, you know, in cans, all kind of peaches and everything was there in the can. We started. So my friend and myself, we were liberated. We got ourselves a little push cart on 2 wheels, you know, and we loaded up a sack of flour with all kind of canned goods, loaded up with there, and we go walking into town. Walked into the town. The first house we see, we walked into the German. I said, we need a room. So right away he gave us a room upstairs. And we took over the house, you know. And we brought in so much food. The Germans, they were happy to see, you know, kind of, because they couldn't get much. They didn't have too much to eat. So anyway, their story by itself.
Yeah.
But I left out some other stories which, you know, I missed. I didn't, being such a long time, I can't remember everything in sequence,
Yes.
you know.
Can you tell us what happened to the rest of your family? Do you know?
Yeah, well, my father, before the evacuation, before sending away all these people, a group of several hundred people were sent out to a village called Bugai. The Germans evacuated 3 villages with Polacks and sending Jews. These villages were surrounded in forest, all in forest, and they sent in these Jews, and Jews were, my father comes from a farm, from a farm, and his father had a farm. They owned, in Poland you couldn't, in our territory Jews could not own any land. So they actually, what they call it, the farm out, they had the farm. So in other words, he knew very well how to work on land and farm, grow different crops. So they sent out several hundred families in that area, and they would start live like farmers, growing potato, everything, And they were there for about a year there. And they were growing all kind. And from that, little by little, they didn't take everybody at one time. They liquidated the Germans. They took them right away, little by little, sent them out to different camps, or to Chelmno. My father, my two youngest brothers, were sent away to a different area around Poznan, in different camps. And I found out that both my father and the two little brothers, they died of starvation in that camp. One of my brother and my brother-in-law went away to the Russian side. When the German invaded, they escaped. They came over to the Russian side. And in the Russians, they didn't have nothing to eat there too. It was very bad for the Jews there too. So the Russians came out and said one day, all the Jews that want to go back to Germany, they should register. All right, and my brother found out the day before that all these Jews that registered would be sent back to Siberia. So they didn't want to go to Siberia. They were run away, hide in the forest. They didn't want to be rounded up with the Russians. So what happened, the Russians rounded up, sent away all the Jews to Siberia, what they registered, and all these Jews survived the war. And my brother and my brother-in-law went back to forest. The Germans invaded the territory the next couple of days, and they were caught by the Germans and killed. They didn't survive. That's why. And another incident, I was in Yavozno, forgot to mention it. In Yavozno, every night, 4 people had night watch in the barrack. 2 hours, everyone. So one night I had night watch, and just happened that while I had the night watch, the light went out for about 5 minutes in the whole camp, but it got dark. And after 5 minutes, the light came back on. And then every morning, you had to assemble before the barrack, and was a head count. You counted our head, and from our block, one was missing. Right away, the whole camp is locked up, closed. Nobody moves. SS start looking around, everybody, they don't know who is missing. They go walking around all the fences, and behind the barrack where I is, they found a hole in the fence, and the number, everybody had a little name tag, a number, not a name, but a number. In camp, you were not a name, you were a number. They found that number hanging on the barbed wire, the time when the electricity went out, he cut a hole in the wire. Evidently it was planned, but some people helped him from the outside. Must be somebody. Yeah. And they found he was missing. So right away, the commandant for the camp, about a big assessment, would come and assess, where is the night watch? The night watch, I stepped out, and 3 others, we had a night watch. And they start hollering, screaming, didn't you supposed to watch the people? Well, I could speak German. I said to him, well, I thought our job is to take care of what's going on inside the barrack, and the job for the outside, this is the man up there. He on the guard upstairs, that's his job. And right away he hit me in the face and started kicking me and stepping me, would step on me, and I was all in blood laying on the ground. And they put me in a bunker. And the bunker was just enough, I could not sit, but just lay on the ground. Was that about 2 feet high, that's all. And they shoved me in there. There was no air, no water, no food, no nothing. For 24 hours, I was in that bunker. The next day when they got me out, they brought me out there, I was half dead. Finally, I survived that area too. Then another incident, I didn't mention it for that. There was a commando working on sewer, laying sewer pipes. There were also a lot of Czech, French people, Poles were working that commando. And they were digging a tunnel. Our barracks were put on stilts because it was high, and it was the ground was not entirely level. It was a little sloping. So what happened? In one barrack, they were digging the ground there. The top was soft sand, and then it was hard, what we call this like almost like a rack underneath, and then under that rack was sand again. So we're digging a tunnel under that rock, under the they're working from the barrack, under the barrack, digging a tunnel, and that was not far from the gate. And the outside the gate was a forest. They were working for about 6 weeks, walking on that, they're working that tunnel, digging it, but with sacks, bringing out the sand on shifts. So the tunnel was already at the other side of the camp, almost. They got to work to dig. Maybe it was close to the guard up there. They were getting a little deeper in the forest, and that was not far from the main gate, that barracks. And one of the SS one time was sitting on a chair at the front gate and looking under that barrack. He noticed that something is moving under there, some people, and he noticed something was going on. They were bringing out the sand and filling up under the barrack, filling up with dirt. And he came in and noticed that the people caught 2 people in that tunnel. Right away, everybody from the whole outside commander, from everybody come in back to the camp, locking up the camp, closing. Nobody moved. They arrested 40 people. Where people was talking, who was helping there were engineers, very prominent people from civilian life, Czech, French people, from Austria, from all different Poles. But they were prominent. They were not going. They were working in the camp. They had better food. They had connections inside. So anyway, 40 people were arrested and sent away to Auschwitz on trucks, loaded up. One was talking who was in charge, who was helping, and who was everything. About 4 weeks later, and one Sunday afternoon, all these 40 people were. I've noticed in front of one barracks they're putting up like gillet, what they got to hang it, yeah. What they brought in 40 people, and 40 people, but got they assessed on the rooftop of the barracks with machine guns all around the camp. And 40 people were brought up, and all 40 people were hung up there. There were Jews, non-Jews, all kind of people. And that was such a set that you couldn't imagine how and the Poles especially, or Czech, they were at the last moment was screaming "Free Poland!" All kinds of slogans against the Germans, and that's how this is how the Germans were treating how the beatings in the camp are just undescribable. You could write a book for every single day when you were in the camp. When you went to sleep at night, you were not sure that you could live till the next morning, you'd be survived. But my determination was, I lived always, I just wanted to live one day until the war was over, and that I didn't care no more.
After the war was over and you had been liberated?
I was liberated by the French army, we liberated. The French treated us very well, very good at the beginning. Anything, privileges, we could ride little trains as far as the train was going, because the trains were bombed out. The main, to Munich, to Stuttgart, to all around the main. But where as far distance we could ride free. We had a permit for any time where we go. We didn't need to buy no tickets, nothing. All these prisoners for DP. On that, when I told you when I was liberated, I got a push cart with a sack of flour. I came to the German. So the German tells me that not far away, it was like they call it a Schloss. In German, it's like a castle, Up there was the German had army that was a warehouse of all kinds of goods, uniforms for military, for the Italian army. So we got up with my friend, and we took that push cart. We went up to that, come up, was balls of cloth, shoes, cloth for the Italian military, all fur coats, with just the skin, no cloth. All kind of shoes, everything was all kind of different. So I took a bolt of cloth, loaded on the wagon, put a bunch of shoes in there, and went right back. For me, being a tailor, And that German in his house had a machine with iron, you know, every German household has a machine. So I took over and made myself a tailor shop right there for them clothes.
What town was this in?
This was this was May, April. It was in May already, and I made away from right away. I made one Eisenhower jacket for myself from the Italian cloth, and a pair of pants for myself, riding breeches, and I made one for my friends. Matter of fact, I have pictures which I had the same. I was the first one from all the prisoners we got survived to wearing a civilian uniform. And I made that for my friend, from that bolt of cloth. And then the night a friend of mine, that friend, had a friend which had camp in the same camp, but he knew of me before, but I never. He brought him he said, make a uniform for him too. Anyway, I made one for him, and we were walking around and liberated. And we were, by 1947, the Germans built up the bridges with the railroad. They could, you know, travel. So fine, we got, my friend, we went to Munich, train, and we knew it was a DP camp called Feldafing. We go to see in the DP camp, see maybe we'll find some friends, some people that we know. We came into the DP camp. We found several of our friends from our hometown. One was a lady, which I knew her from home, you know, was there too. She had a son before the war, but she was an elderly lady. And we made friends. About a friend, he was also a tailor there. He was, had several friends. In that camp, gave us a place where we could sleep over, stay over. And we, being on the French zone, we had plenty of food. Right away we did went to butchers, but being the French treating us, we could have come salami. Whenever we came to that camp, we start traveling quite often to that camp. Whoever brought some special food for them, and they treated us as very friend. And because in the German zone around this camp, you couldn't buy too much food. And in the French zone, we went into the civilian butcher. We could, salami, we bought it, whenever we went, they brought some food in there. And we had already, whenever we came, we had one day, we were invited, one of our friends getting married. We invited to a wedding, and the wedding is going to be in a city called Weiden. This is close to the Czech border. And he's getting married to an older friend, a girl that he knew from our hometown. We come to that wedding, and we come in there, and I've met a lot of our friends from our hometown, from different areas, from different camps. And one of my friends just came back from Poland, and he said, you know what? I've seen your brother in Lodge. I said, what brother? He said, Alan, I see there. And one of my friends, he and another friend went back to Lodge, and I gave him a message, send it to my brother that I'm alive and I'm here. So one day, I went back. It's been up a few weeks' time, a couple of months, and I came back to that camp again and visiting the people. In the meantime, we did some black marketing too, after the war. So I come in, and there was a movie playing in the camp. We went to the movie house, and we came back about 11:30 late at night. And and I see somebody is laying in my cot where I'm supposed to sleep, my place. And he keeps his blanket up, covered up. There's just his eyes are showing. And I look, I see, and he opens up. I say, Alan? He said, yes. You could imagine our, visit, our meeting there. It's just undescribable, I tell you. We just fall on each other. We didn't see for so many years. I couldn't imagine to tell you this. Mhm.
All right. You were telling us about your reunion with your brother?
Yeah.
Hold it.
Well-
A couple minutes, just a few more seconds till I make sure I get back up to speed.
All right,
Speed now.
all right.
Well, I met my brother, you know, it was very a reunion. Then I took my brother, we went back to my place where I was on the French zone. He stayed with me a couple of days. But my brother, he left a girlfriend in Lodge. So he told me he has to go back to Lodge. Okay, he went back, you know, he was staying around in Germany. Past a few weeks, I'm not sure, maybe a couple of months. And then I received a telegram that my brother is in Munich. He told me where I was, and I got on the train, and I come to Munich. My brother is there with his girlfriend. All right. I brought both my brother and his girlfriend to my place, to Hamno, to my to a place called it was Altshausen, and got a room for him. My brother there stayed, and then we came to Salgau. In Salgau, he had a Jewish community, because we're different Jewish, like the way organized a Jewish community, and we had services on every Friday night. We had brought from Ulm, they brought a Sefer Torah. In our holidays, we had services, a Jewish community, and the community was in charge with the French authorities. The French brought us, brought food for us, and we see, you know, that was. Then from the UNRWA, we get packages, everything, and then how we stayed there. Well, why finally my brother decided he's going to get married. So we got married. He made a date. There was no rabbi in Salgau. So we brought a rabbi from Ulm and brought it back and arranged a wedding in the same place where the Jewish community was. It used to be a place, a big restaurant before the war, and the French gave that building for our Jewish community. So when the wedding came, they arranged the wedding. My brother's the fiancée, she invited her two sisters, survived also, you know, to the wedding. So her two sisters came, and I met both of them there. And while they're there, the two sisters, when they were there for a few days, they were in a DP camp, and they were in Berlin at that time, I think. And or probably they were also in a camp, a different camp called Felderfing. They were in another camp. I don't remember, my wife's camp. And in a few days they went back, and I I met my wife, made her acquaintance, and they went back. The past few months, I used to travel to that camp and bring always some, take along some food for the two sisters whenever I went there. And in 1949, my wife had an aunt in Toronto, and she helped bring the two sisters to Toronto. And I dated my wife several times. We were going out to different, to different parties in that camp, or dance places, And when the time come to take her to the station, I took her to the station, and they went to Canada. In the meantime, my brother and I, we registered to come to American Consul in Baden-Baden, and it took several months. We worked to get to come to, to quota to come to America. And the time came in the end of November, we had time we travel, we're going to America. We arrived in New York on December 1, 1949. In New York, my brother was assigned to go to Richmond, and I was assigned to go to St. Paul, Minnesota. It's very cold. And in New York, we went to the house, and I said we talking, I say, I said to the people, we don't want to be separated anymore.
So you didn't have to go to St. Paul?
So they called up here in Richmond the Ladies Hebrew Benevolent to ask her to have a job for another tailor. And I said yes.
Okay. You tell us when you're ready, sir.
Yes, I'm ready now.
Okay.
And they said I had a job for another to call up Tolheimers. And Tolheim at the job.
Mm-hmm.
On December 1, they came here to Richmond, picked us up from the station, and a week later I had a job at Tolheimers already. My brother got a job at Belleburg. I had a job at Tolheimers.
Yeah. Were working for Tallheimers and your brother was working for Barry Burke. All right, wait a minute.
I don't know. I came to Richmond to work a job at Tolheimers. Mhm.
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right, I came to Richmond after I came December 1, 49 to Richmond, and 9 days later I had already a job with Tolheimers. I worked at Tolheimers till August 1953. In 53 I went to business for myself. But in the meantime, while I was in Tolheimers, working for 5 months at Tolheimers, I went to Canada to visit my girlfriend. If a visit, see what's going on, how things happen. I spent a vacation of 8 days there and come back. And I came back to Richmond in 1952. My wife, my present wife, my girlfriend, came to visit her sister to Richmond here for a visit for vacation. Had only 8 days vacation, a permit for 8 days. While she came here, we arranged a quick wedding, marriage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had my friends in Tolheimers. Sam Brown was my foreman, and also Sam Levine, and they helped me get everything, get a marriage license quick, and buy a wedding ring.
Mm-hmm.
And we arranged a quick marriage. We went to, we had a real Orthodox wedding. I was boarding the old man Hoffman, Charlie Hoffman here on, what the street name is down on, not Ironwood, it was on Lakeview Avenue, that's right. On Lakeview Avenue, we arranged a Friday wedding, Friday afternoon, very Orthodox. My wife, she had to go to the mikveh, and she, and we had to carried 7 times around, and the wedding was such a wedding. All we had is sandwiches for wedding, and the quick wedding. And my wife had to leave the next morning. She had to go back, leave the American border in where you go across the border. What do you call the city in Oh,
To cross back into Canada?
to Canada, yeah, across the border. That was in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls. And I didn't have no papers to leave the country. I had a expired permit, which I went to visit my wife the first time, and I knew that I could leave the country, but I couldn't come back. While on the train, I went to the conductor. That was before Niagara Falls, and I told the conductor we are just honeymooners. My wife has to go back to Toronto, and and I have no papers. I showed him this paper what I had, the expired paper with a picture of mine on it, and he said I can leave, but I can't come back. So the conductor was such a nice guy. He stopped the train, went to the customs office with me, and I showed him the paper, told him the story, what's all about honeymooners, and he gave a stamp on that paper, and he gave for another 6 months. Yeah. So I went to Toronto. We spent a honeymoon there in a hotel. I was there for a week, and I came back, went back to my job, and I started working on papers to bring my wife to the United States. It took about 6 months. Finally, my wife came here, and while I was working on a job, and my wife came back, and I was in a rooming house, and I had a special room they gave us up there for my wife. Then I rented an apartment. In the apartment, while I was still working at Holheimer's, it was on Davis Avenue, South Davis Avenue in Richmond. We used the Bird Park there, beautiful. At that time, was considered a very beautiful area. And we got married, and my wife came back there, and I worked. But working at Holheimer's, while I was single, I was making $45 a week, and I saved $20 from that every week, and I put away some money. Finally, with my wife, I decided I can't make a living from working for somebody else. In 1953, I decided I had to go and buy in business for myself. In the meantime, which I left out, my brother, while he was working at Barry Burke's, while I was working at Holheimer, he was making $35 a week, and I was making $45. So his wife was not happy with that. That he was making less money being married, and I was single. So I brought from Germany, when I came here, I brought my sewing machine, and I got myself a big crate. I had to get myself a very beautiful a set of Rosenthal dishes, 3 sets for $6. One was a mocha set, one was a tea set, and one a dinner set. I packed the dishes in that crate in my sewing machine. Being in Bremerhaven, I noticed that on the forklift were lifting up to load that crate, and that crate dropped. They dropped that crate. I said, oh my God, everything is broken in that crate. We came to New York. We shipped that crate to Richmond. I opened up the crate. My machine was bent, but the dishes was not broken at all. So with that machine, my brother quit the job at Barry Burke's, and he couldn't find another job. Some other person decided, let's go in business, put my brother in business. We both go in business. So for myself, having a job at $45 at Holheimer's, I told my brother, you stay in business. When business is good, I quit my job and I go with you together. And so put my brother on Meadow Street in business. And I was helping after hours, came back from Holheimer's work. On weekend, I helped out my brother. And he finally decided, you stay, and I kept my job. When my wife came back here, I decided to go in business myself. I opened a tailor shop. I bought out some tailor. It used to be Greenberg on Shepherd and Carey Street. I bought a tailor shop. I worked out. Meantime, we had 2 children. We raised 2 children. I have a son is a lawyer in Norfolk. Does very well. He is a partner in a law firm. His daughter got married. She had a master's degrees in business in hospital administration. She had the University of Michigan, a free scholarship for 2 years. She got there as to get a master's degree. And then she went to Cleveland, Ohio, and she got a job in the Metropolitan General Hospital as a business administrator. And she married a nice young man who used to live across the street, but she met him in the Jewish Community Federation. She got married. Now she had a daughter, was 2 years in December. She's expecting another son next month in April.
Oh,
And we expect to go to that, to the bris, with God's help, and hope everything works out so everybody is happy now. My wife is especially happy, being a grandmother. But I left out some, going back, the liquidation of our town, from home. When when I was already 6 months in camp, and on December 12, 1941, they liquidated the city completely, all the Jews. They assembled everybody in the synagogue, and from the synagogue they put them on trucks, and while they sent them to Chelmno. And the time they got from the synagogue to Chelmno, they were dead in the trucks. They were gassed in the trucks. The Germans were such technician engineers. They came out with trucks, built cars. They gassed the people in the trucks. One of my friends, a very close friend of mine from before the war, and his wife and my wife, I was married, had 2 children. His wife and my wife were good friends, they were girlfriends. So, the German took 40 healthy young men from the group out from the liquidation. They are the ones that were digging the ditches in Chelmno for the people where they brought in on the trucks who were dead to be buried right away in these ditches. One day, he found his wife and his 2 children were dead, put it in a ditch. So he threw himself on his wife with the children. He says to the assessment, they kill him, he wants to die with his family together. So the German says, no, you are a very strong, healthy man, you can still work. So we're going back, at the same day, riding back from the truck, they had a military truck covered with canvas. And at the end of the truck were 2 German guards with machine guns sitting there. And while he was on the truck, with a knife, he cut through the canvas, jumped up the truck into the forest. He was running for 2 days and 2 nights. He was scared to death, and the Germans at the time, they realized what happened. They were drove away several miles away, and they stopped the truck, got up with the shepherd dog, started chasing in the forest, but they couldn't catch him anymore. He went as far as Warsaw, then joined the partisan, and he survived. He was one of the witnesses at the Nuremberg trials, testifying about Chelmno, what happened. And on the movie Shoah, he is one there, if you can look him up, he is one of the heavy guys, and he testifies, and he's one of the survivors. But not, I met him after the war in Frankfurt. He told me the whole story, how he survived and what happened to him. And then when I came to the gathering in Israel, 1981, to the gathering, I met him there again, and we had very good reunion with him. Today, last year on a mission, went to the mission from the Federation to Israel. I found out he passed away. He was dead. I didn't see him no more. And that's about the whole of my life story.
You brought with you...
Yeah, I brought with me one picture of the synagogue in our town. This synagogue was dynamited and blown up by the Germans, and because of that, they took out 10 prominent Jews from the city. All the Jews, they hung them up, and the Jewish community, all the Jews survived, the rest of the Jewish community had to pay reparations. They blamed the Jews that Jews blow up the city. They had to pay a reparation for blowing up the city. And this is the city of our town.
Rob, is there anything else you want? Sol, thank you very much for
You're
sharing your
welcome.
story with us.
That's finished.
All right? Thank you.